Wouldn't it be amazing to have the power to read minds? In fighting games, we could be our own worst enemy. Sometimes the obvious will be right in front of us and we won't even realize it, costing us the game. If only we could have seen it coming. If only there was a way to have known what was going to happen. There are patterns taking place in our matches and we may not be noticing. I'd like to welcome you to the idea of making reads. So what even is a read? Well, to put it simply, a read is an educated guess of what you think someone will be doing next. You usually make a read based off a pattern you've noticed in your opponent's behavior or playstyle. The term read basically implies reading something like a book. There's also saying,
Okay, I can explain this. Download complete.
when an opponent is being constantly read and seems completely figured out. There are two types of reads: hard reads and soft reads. A hard read typically means that you're very certain that the opponent will for sure do a certain behavior. Sometimes you'll follow up a hard read with an attack that provides huge reward and is also high risk. But if you made the hard read properly, the risk has been greatly reduced. And on the other hand, a soft read is like saying that the opponent will most likely do said behavior. You may choose not to take a huge risk to punish the upcoming behavior just in case they change things up. So we can see as a hard read being that you know for sure, and soft read being an educated guess. Now, you may be asking, are making reads even worth the effort? What really is the importance behind making reads? Well, think of fighting games as a game of chess, if you will. If you only really think about your own moves, chances are you'll be caught by surprise more than you'd like. And it's important to remember that the other person you're playing against is human too. They're also thinking about how to achieve what they want to do against you. So if both of you are doing the same thing and not really paying much attention to what the other is doing, we're kind of just out here flipping coins. If someone told you that you could learn to accurately predict what side of the coin would land on after the coin flip, wouldn't you like to know how? I know I'd like to be able to always predict that coin flip. Both players in a battle will be creating strategies and trying to manipulate the other player into falling for these strategies. By having a read on what is trying to be done, you can counteract the strategy and force them to create a new one, while obtaining a reward for yourself. Now, some of you may be asking, "Hey Shrimp, how do I start making my own reads?" Well, let's start off by just counting how many times your opponent dashes towards you each round. You're not expected to just have a complete read after one round. It's good to play opponents for longer sets if possible, especially if they're of similar skill level to you. Remember those dashes you were counting? Now try to intercept them when you think they'll happen. Does the opponent dash between 5 or 8 times per round? Now try to find how often the dashes are happening. Is it about every 9 seconds or so? Let's try to intercept that movement. Once you start to intercept these forward dashes we spoke of, congratulations, you've begun making reads. Now I suggest you continue working on making reads by finding out what moves opponents generally use out of the forward dashes, and how often they use said moves. Learn to counter those moves and create the appropriate response for when you know it's coming. So we now have an idea on how to start making reads. Another key component to becoming a better player overall is to pay close attention to your opponent. Don't solely focus on your buttons in your play, also observe what the other player's doing. It's good to realize that just like you want to land something on your opponent, they want to land something on you. While focusing on what you want to accomplish, Take your opponent into consideration. Think about how they move, what buttons they press, or moves they do. Try to keep track of these things and look for patterns. Now you must use these patterns to your advantage. If the opponent always jabs and then dashes forward, find a way to counter his behavior and keep them in check. My advice for learning to make reads in the middle of matches is to start off with baby steps. If you're new to the concept of making reads, try to start small and build up from there. Okay, let's discuss something really crucial that I like to call autopilot. When you don't focus on an opponent's actions, you can occasionally enter a sort of autopilot or flowchart without even realizing it. You'll sometimes become easier to read because your offense starts to go through patterns. It's best to actively think of what you'll do next instead of just trying to attack the opponent to keep up pressure. Entering these type of blind pressure situations can leave gaps in your offense or easy spots for your opponent to counter you in. It's good to change up your attack patterns and vary them to the best of your abilities so that opponents will have a harder time getting a read on you. Just like you may be trying to get a read on them, remember what we talked about earlier. They too are a living, breathing human being on the other side of this battle, so they may be trying to get reads on you as well. Stronger opponents will feel like a harder book to read. Sometimes they'll feel like it's completely random. But most humans will develop patterns in some form. It's hardwired into our brains to try to be more efficient with our actions, or more streamlined. That is why to be truly random is truly impossible for the human mind. Some players become so skilled with layering and varying their offense that they feel completely random, but they too can be read. You should aim to play fully aware so that you can react and also make reads on an opponent in the heat of battle. If you play on autopilot, you won't be doing much of these two things. And the one opponent that is truly random that you can't get a read on are the people who just press all the buttons at once. You know who you are. You can't be read, so let's not try that one. That is an unreadable book. How can you get a read on an opponent who doesn't even know what they're doing? It's all a mystery from there.
This is a
Button masher.
dear God. There's more. No.
You should try to stay in the right mindset for making reads. Think about what goes through your mind when facing off against an opponent. What are you thinking about? Are you thinking about how you're going to land a combo? Or perhaps some hard-hitting move? It may seem easier to just think of how you're going to land that one attack or combo, but realistically, if you think about the opponent's actions instead of how you are going to get your actions done, you'll find that the opportunity will provide itself much more often in the form of a read. Your opponent will give you a read eventually, you just have to look for it. Of course, making reads against opponents that you fight regularly, like your friends, will feel much simpler than when facing off against new opponents. Jimmy always does 2 jabs into a Hadoken. What an easy read this guy is. What a joke, dude. I play against Jimmy every day, probably 3 hours a day, in between lunches. Alright, but yeah, you get what I'm saying. Think of a new opponent as a blank book that is about to be written, starting with round 1. The opponent doesn't get much time to write this book during this single match alone, so there's a high chance that eventually some of the pages in their book will repeat. I call this the copy-paste method. The opponent hasn't had much time to feel out your playstyle or to create an offensive plan against your playstyle, so there's a high chance they'll slip up and begin patterns just in the first match alone. This is one of the main reasons I recommend facing off against players that are closer to your skill level. They should be able to provide you with reads appropriate to your skill level. Facing off against much higher skilled players can sometimes leave you feeling lost. The more experience a player has, the better they'll become at masking their patterns and making it feel random when it really isn't. Remember to start your reads off simple, especially in the first map. Focus on reading movement and maybe a move that gives you trouble. Even at the highest levels of play, movement tends to be the easiest thing to get a read on. Even if you didn't like reading growing up, I encourage you to learn to read when it comes to games. It can become one of your greatest tools and can span through different genres of games or other real-life applications. I hope you were able to learn something new from this video. If you liked the video, go ahead and drop it a like. If you're not already subscribed, go ahead and subscribe if you'd like to join our little dojo here. And to watch future videos, of course. Thank you for watching. Now, go make some reads.